Hello and welcome back to the game room. You know what I love? Video games. You know what I love talking about? Games. And it seems like a lot of people these days who cover games seem to hate them. Or at least the people who play them. Well, that's not me, and that's not the 1,851 of you beautiful people checking out this video here today. Well, we are finally winding down 2023, and it's been a pretty dang good year. I'm starting to think of it as the year of the sequel, and mainly a sequel to 2017 and 2018. And that's a good thing, and also, in some ways, it's been a letdown. So, where do I stack up on 2023's releases? Let's talk about all the different games that came out this year, all the ones I've played, some of the ones I haven't played. Now, we're not going to talk about every game, but I'm going to try to hit most of the big ones. And then at the end of this video, we're going to talk about my game of the year, and I think, let's say my top 5 games. Alright, let's check it out. There's a lot of games out there, some of which you've never even heard of. That's where I come in. My name's Luke. I've been playing games since the age of 2, and I have no life.
This is my game room.
So this year started off hot. I knew immediately the first game I would want to check out was the latest entry in one of my favorite series, which is Fire Emblem, with the new game Fire Emblem Engage. Now, overall, I have very positive feelings about this game. It really brings the combat back to a nice, predictable and steady type, while still maintaining some of the quality of life, such as the rewind time function they've introduced in recent entries, but getting rid of some of the needing to have 2 players always bound together, either for defensive reasons or for offensive reasons, or for having armies attached to your characters like you did in Three Houses. Now, you still can pair your guys up with someone, but in this one, it's sort of a fan service thing where you have rings that carry a big-time character from Fire Emblem's history. In fact, from one of each game, all the way up until Engage. And as a big fan of Fire Emblem Path of Radiance, being able to have Ike paired up with one of my characters and then just absolutely destroying things was so extremely satisfying. Now, story-wise, was very up and down. There's a lot of those moments where people are like, oh my god, I'm going to attack you. Alright, let's back up now so that we can attack you. Or you defeat the enemy only to have the enemy then run away. That gets a little cumbersome and tiresome, but overall a very solid game, and probably my favorite Fire Emblem game since Awakening. I definitely liked it more than Three Houses. I felt like they mitigated a lot of the stuff as far as having to do back at base if you just didn't give a damn, which I just didn't give a damn. So I liked it. Very solid game. Not up there in my game of the year, and not even on my top 5, but still very, very solid strategy RPG, and enough to keep the series going. And there's DLC for it that I'm ignoring, but still very good game. So the game that came out after that is one, I believe, I don't know if it was Hi-Fi Rush or Dead Space Remake. So I don't have either of these games, but let's talk about Hi-Fi Rush. So Hi-Fi Rush, I keep confusing with another game called Neon White that had a lot of praise from last year. But Hi-Fi Rush, I've heard the name. I don't think there's a physical copy, and I think it's like a rhythm-based game. I don't know. It's something I'll check out, but every time I see screenshots of it or see it, it just does not look like something I'd be into. Now, on the flip side, Dead Space Remake is something that I would whole hog be into. However, there was a lot of remakes this year, and the Dead Space Remake just wasn't high on the priority list for me with some of the other newer games coming out. So I've been waiting for that game to go on sale. I think the cheapest I've seen it go down to might be $30 or $40. And I just don't want to pay that. I don't want to pay that for a game that I've already played to death, that I'll probably put on my shelf and not play. Especially playing Callisto Protocol this year and getting my Dead Space fix that way. Even though Dead Space 1 is probably one of my favorite horror games of all time, I don't know. I'm willing to wait for a deal on that one. So coming up next, though, after those, I believe, and I'm trying to do this in order, so forgive me if I'm a little out of order, but I think the next one to come out was the very controversial Hogwarts Legacy. Now, we're not going to get into the controversy, why it's there, where it's there for. You all know why. Now, I think that actually the controversy helped this game. So I'm not the biggest Harry Potter fan, but I have seen all the movies and I have read all the books, so take that as you will. This is a very, very good game for someone who is a fan of the series because they do such a faithful recreation of Hogsmeade and Hogwarts proper and the countryside, and the lore is just shooting out the gills. But as far as gameplay-wise goes, it is bogged down in so much meaningless bloat as far as capturing pages, needing to spend time to craft things, needing to spend time to get reagents from animals, needing to spend time just to get into your inventory to put stuff on and then transmog it the way you want to look instead of having a default. And it takes forever to sell things, it takes forever to buy potions, there's not a very easily accessible money thing. A lot of the side quest content that unlocks other options out in the world is not the most fun stuff to do, and there's so much of it. The main storyline itself is interesting. I actually found the main storyline more interesting than some of the free open world roaming that happens in all these games. Think of something akin to an Assassin's Creed as far as collectibles, and then a GTA or a Red Dead as far as you go up to individual guys, get missions, and then go on from there and have these story scenes. A lot of the characters I didn't find all that likable, and there's a lot of, oh my god, the plot's moving until, okay, let's arbitrarily stop it here so that you have to go and complete other side quests until you can move the plot forward, which I found annoying. The main Gryffindor person you're paired up with, I could not stand. And then she tells us one of the things that I don't even know if they knew they did this. She says she came from one of the other magic schools, which was really interesting. And then she says they don't use wands and that you don't need to use wands to use magic. It's more of a show thing. When everything I know about Harry Potter is that if you get disarmed, as in lose your wand, you can't use magic. So I don't know if that's just a thing they threw in there to be cheeky, or if they knew what they were setting up with that, because it's never addressed again. But that was annoying. Of course, the Slytherin dude is evil, which I will give them props that they do have the evil unspeakable spells in the game, and they allowed those unspeakable spells to be game breaking if you go down that path and get them, which of course I did. And you can kill one of the everything but the last boss you can kill instantly with Avada Kedavra, which was super cool. Props to them for doing that. Then there's the other lady. So there's like a main character of each house. So you have the Hufflepuff person, the Ravenclaw, the Gryffindor, and the Slytherin. The Hufflepuff quest line is pretty cool. You're saving animals. And then the Ravenclaw one kind of gets the short end of the stick. You don't really do much with that person. But all in all, just kind of a letdown as far as the game goes. It's very mid. I say it's not a great game. It did not deserve Game of the Year awards or any nominations, which is why it didn't. And it's just funny. The amount of controversy about people hating on the game before it came out, I think helped it with the sales and helped with more people picking it up, because it really is just not a great game. But anyways, enough of that game. I believe the next game to come out might have been my pick it up for $20 or less game of the year, which was Forspoken on the PS5. Now, I played the demo of this, and I was kind of on the fence if I wanted to pick it up or not, and then after playing the demo, I definitely decided that I was not picking it up. The combat seemed interesting, the mechanics seemed a little overdone, but really it just seemed like more of the same as far as these open world games that have you go doing quests and blah blah blah. And then I don't have to say it, the main character is very insufferable, just constantly throwing out curse words just to be edgy as hell, and I didn't like the dynamic setup. But it did seem like something to be worth picking up, much like I would say last year would have been Callisto Protocol for my $20 or less deal. Forspoken I picked up for about $15 brand new, and I'd say that's about right. So I have just played the demo. I don't know more about it, and maybe there's a way to mute the incessant talking from the main character, but it looked interesting enough, although I just killed a studio with my mind. Like, the memes were great. The memes that came out of this were great, and you could see it coming from a mile off. But still, something I'm looking forward to checking out. Cheap, which I did, and I'll be looking at that eventually. Alright, now I think actually this game might have come out before Forspoken, and this game is phenomenal. So the sequel to 2018's Octopath Traveler is Octopath Traveler 2. Now, I really got irritated when this game came out because a lot of the reviews were unfairly punishing it for being a sequel to a game that came out, and then saying, oh, because there's been 4 games in the last 6 years that had this presentation of graphics, oh, we're getting over it. Are you kidding me? When we have the same sports game every year, the same wrestling games, the same shooters, every new first-person shooter this with RPG mechanic. I mean, hell, tell me the difference between Forspoken and Hogwarts Legacy. I mean, they both, I mean, we'll get to it eventually, but Final Fantasy 16, all these games use the same tracks, the same style of game, but this one actually is a completely unique game that it improves, adding a day and night cycle. Now you have 8 brand new characters, brand new divergent paths. They aren't just as predictable as they were in the first game. Some of the characters will have 4, 5, 6 scenarios. Some will have 3 scenarios. They actually allow all the characters to level up simultaneously, though not as quickly, unlike the first game where they would just get left behind. I can't remember, it's been a while. And they bring back the ultimate secret boss. There's a end game now, an end game where you actually get to fight against the last boss using all 8 characters simultaneously, which is so... I can't remember a more incredible fight scene. A similar thing to this happened when I did Live Alive last year, where it let you do that. So I'm looking forward to the potential of having these big, ginormous boss battles where you have multiple characters. It's very cool. And I just loved it. I loved everything about the game. It did continue what Octopath 1 did, but it did it in a way that was good. And really, it was a lot darker in my opinion. The characters I thought overall were a lot more intriguing, and they weren't all just, oh, collect 3 X's and then get to the final boss, where you saw who the final boss was coming a mile away. A lot of these were intertwined. You could see the overarching plot. It was a better game. It was a better game, and I think a lot of the criticism people gave it is that instead of going in the route that a lot of people wanted, where they wanted just a normal storyline that wasn't just 8 separate storylines that dovetail, instead of doing that, they kind of doubled down on the 8 different storylines that dovetail, but in a better way that's more obvious. And it worked supremely well. And the combat's so good. The way it works is enemies have weak points. You diagnose those weak points, and then you get them into a break phase, which makes them miss a turn. And you can do this when they're powering up. You can use this for all different types of strategy. Now, in addition to your boost points, you have a special that you can unleash. And then you have the ability to use special concoctions. And there's this... It's such a great, well-designed game. I could go on and on and on about it. So Octopath 2, phenomenal game. You should check it out. One of 2023's best. And then I believe the next thing to come out, which is a game I haven't played, but is Metroid Prime Remastered. So there was a lot of remasters that came out this year. Like I said, the Dead Space remaster, Metroid Prime remaster. It was only $40, so surprisingly cheap, and the physical copy was a little hard to get a hold of, so I picked it up. Metroid Prime is not one of my favorite GameCube games. It was the first Metroid game I ever played, and I did enjoy it, but I didn't enjoy it so much to go out and buy the sequels immediately, but it was something I wanted to make sure and pick up and have in the collection. Alright, so the next thing to come out after that was The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. And as phenomenal and as amazing as this game is, it really is just Breath of the Wild with some very cool new mechanics thrown in that I did like, and then some very cool new mechanics that I didn't care so much for. So it adds a building element to it that I really could not stand. There's actually a rune you can pick up that does an auto build that will automatically rebuild things you just did up to a certain extent. I didn't find that rune until I was almost 80 hours into the game. So maybe if I'd found that earlier, it wouldn't have been so bad. But it has the same sort of... It really just feels like you're playing through a retread of Breath of the Wild at times, but it adds new things like temples that Breath of the Wild was missing. Now, if this game had come out instead of Breath of the Wild, this would have been Game of the Year, bar none. No, not a question. This game is amazing. It adds an entire underworld. It adds a sky world. It adds new nuances that were missing from Breath of the Wild that were sorely missed. It still has the breaking mechanic of your weapons, but the storyline is more mature. There's a really nice story arc for Zelda, for Ganon, for Link himself. And it's just a masterpiece of a game and a masterpiece of a sequel, but it is a sequel. It'll be interesting to see what happens over the years, because this isn't going to be like an Ocarina of Time or Majora's Mask scenario. This is really truly a unique scenario where eventually, let's say a decade from now, when people have, let's say, played Tears of the Kingdom without playing Breath of the Wild, it will be interesting to know if, because this one would be more highly regarded. Now, I myself prefer Breath of the Wild because I like the tablet abilities more in Breath of the Wild than in Tears of the Kingdom, because Tears of the Kingdom seems a little bit too geared towards the building mechanic. But that's myself. You know, I enjoyed making the ice bridges. I enjoyed making the bombs. I felt like the temples in this game were all too samey, and it just, you know, there were certain things like going up into the sky. I discovered the water temple before I was supposed to, which was super cool, but then I couldn't do anything in it. And I feel like that irked me a little bit. And I don't remember that ever happening to me in Breath of the Wild. But conversely, there are some cool things like finding, you know, shadow Ganons in caves, or even finding the underworld and realizing what it is was a super cool moment and really phenomenal. But overall, it was such a good sequel, but it is a sequel. And a lot of what makes this game great is what made Breath of the Wild great. So it really is just continuing more of the same. It's not DLC. That's unfair to the game to say it's DLC. It's still a phenomenal game, well worth checking out. Definitely deserved to be nominated for something like Game of the Year. But for myself, it is not. And I know why it didn't win, but it's still, if you like Breath of the Wild, if you didn't, give this one a shot. You might find something in here that makes it go over the hump for you. Alright, and then the next game that came out after Breath of the Wild that I played was the first mainline Final Fantasy I've picked up at launch since Final Fantasy IX back in the year 2000, and that was Final Fantasy 16. And I was not intending on picking this up at launch, but I saw a trailer of it during the PlayStation State of Play back in maybe April that got me intrigued. I won't lie, it got me intrigued because they brought it home to us old times fans by having the summons play a central role. So I wanted to see what this was about. So I played the demo. I generally don't play a lot of demos, unless the Square, it seems like. I played the demo. And the demo did impress me. I really enjoyed the demo. And so I picked it up day one. And getting to play as the different icons, getting to see Shiva and Titan and Ifrit and Phoenix and Odin. No Leviathan, although they've announced the Leviathan DLC after they said there wasn't going to be any DLC, but that's for another thing. But just the big kaiju Godzilla-like fights in this game are phenomenal. The storyline is great. The characters, the human work in this is really good. There's a really mature relationship for once in a Final Fantasy between Clive and Jill, which is nice. And I feel like it peaks a little early. That's my biggest gripe with it, because the combat is fun. It's not the turn-based combat that I love, but at least they focused on just one character instead of having you switch among different characters, because you have other people in your party, but you really just control Clive. And it's interesting because you can move about the icons. You have 3 different icons you can use at once. So you can have Shiva, you can be using Ifrit, and you can be using Titan all simultaneously. Myself, I got locked into liking Ifrit with a Phoenix mix with Garuda and then Titan. And even after I got Odin and Bahamut and the other icons, I still didn't use them. But you do have the freedom to go about using them. And it's got great music. It has a crafting system, but the crafting system is so just bad that it doesn't really affect anything. And I know some people hated on it for that. I actually liked it for that because it didn't have me waste time. Generally, I had the reagents. It's a fairly open world that you can explore, and if you see a big arena, that's usually where a hunt's going to be. Hunt's kind of like they had back in Final Fantasy 12. And I went through and I did all the side quests, and it unlocked a lot of great side quest content and also some not so great side quest content. So they're in this world too. There's a thing where the magic users have been subjugated by the non-magic users, and I'm just not quite, versus the icons are kind of like gods among men for most societies where everyone just bows down to them. And I, for the life of me, don't know how that was established. Reasonably so, because if you can just use magic without having to use a crystal, which the other people need to use a crystal to use magic, you would think that the magic users would be the ones to subjugate the non-magic users. But I digress. And also that whole plot thread kind of just gets dropped around the halfway point of the game. And one of the best versions of Sid I've ever seen. Probably up there with Sid Highwind for myself. Like, I don't know if I'd say this Sid is better than Sid. No, it's not. But probably my second favorite Sid in this game. So all in all, phenomenal. Best Final Fantasy game I've played in years. Though, still would love for it to go back to turn-based. Alright, now around this time, I think the Advance Wars 1 and 2 Reboot Camp came out, which I haven't picked up, though I would like to check that out at some point. And also, I think the new Jedi Survivor game came out, which is a sequel to Jedi Fallen Order. It came out and kind of was a flash in the pan. People talked about it, and people who like that game like it, but then, kind of like the original, it just kind of fell off. It just looked like more of the same to me, and after playing the first game this year, I'll probably pick up the second one when it's $10, $15, $20, but I was not all that impressed. But moving on from that, the next game to come out was Pikmin 1 and 2, so another remaster. I'm a big fan of the Pikmin series. With Pikmin 4 coming out this year, I definitely wanted to pick up Pikmin 1 and 2 just to check it out. And I have played through Pikmin 1 again, and it's a pretty decent port, I will say, although it just doesn't feel quite right. Yeah, I'd like to go back to the GameCube version and see if there's any noticeable differences I can notice. But between this time, I believe the next game to come out was Full Quiet on the Switch and all the other downloads. So Full Quiet is a game that I backed on Kickstarter, came out on the NES, that I had yet to play. And it came out for the Switch and other consoles, and this might have been my game of the year. Now, I'm going to disqualify it because it technically came out in 2022. But if you want to know what my favorite game this year, this one might be it. It was the closest to a pure adventure where you have no idea what to do. You figure out what's in there by what's in there. And it's one of those things where I talk about video game logic a lot. If you want to grow your video game logic, or if you want to understand what I mean by that phrase, play this game, don't look anything up, try and figure it out. You will be amazed. It's one of those things where if you start noticing why something's there, it was put there for a reason. And so if you can listen to that, you can then start figuring things out. And it was such a great experience, and I'm so glad that they reached out to me to play it on the Switch and cover it, because I probably may not have gotten to this game for a while, and because of that, it's literally one of my games of the year right now. And at this point of the year, I believe Baldur's Gate 3 came out. Now, because it did not have a physical edition, I did not pick it up, though I could have told you that this game coming out from a mile away was likely going to be game of the year. The only thing I know about it is that you can make love to a bear. Because that's the biggest thing I know about it. But it's made by Larian, who did the Divinity games. I'm hoping, I actually pre-ordered the physical version that was just announced earlier this month. It's coming out next year in June or February or January or something like that. So I'll play it then, hopefully. And we'll see if I can get through it, unlike Divinity. And now that I'm wearing glasses, I should be able to read all the tiny text. But it's just nice to see a turn-based RPG do so well this day and age, even if it's one that's less linear than I tend to like Octopath 2. But still, more power to them. Great on Larian for making that game. And from everything I've heard, it is well-deserved. So I'm looking forward to checking that out. Alright, so by this time, the next game that came out that I did pick up and check out is one of the best games of the year in my opinion as well, and that is Pikmin 4. So as a Pikmin fan, this is a greatest hits of everything they've done in every single Pikmin game. It's more or less a soft reboot of the whole series. Even when you beat the game, there's more to it, and it unlocks a pseudo Pikmin 1 remake that is a lot of fun. Now, the dog character they've introduced both makes the game better quality of life way, but has also broken the game as far as the challenge, because you can put all your Pikmin on his back, so now having to deal with blue Pikmin being able to go in water, or having to deal with wrangling your squad isn't as hard. And my biggest gripe is the thing they introduced in Pikmin 3, which was time gating you as far as how many people you could have in your squad. Because one of the best things about the first two Pikmins, and when the first one was coming out, one of the things they advertise is you can have 100 people in your squad immediately. And starting in 3, they limited it to like 20 or 30, and then you would slowly unlock more Pikmin the later in the game you got. And they kept this with Pikmin 4. And because of that, it makes the game longer than it necessarily had to be. So it turned it into a 40-hour game, which if you had 100 Pikmin from the offset, it would probably be closer to a 30-hour game. No kidding, because there's a lot of items you can't pick up because you don't have enough Pikmin to do it. Because you haven't unlocked the purple Pikmin, or you haven't found the flying Pikmin, or the ice Pikmin, or whatever. Yeah, you don't have enough ice Pikmin to throw in it. And it also threw a loop in there because in the previous games, you've only had the onion as red, blue, or yellow. And in this one, you can get an onion for all the different colored Pikmin. So now you can make rock Pikmin, you can make ice Pikmin, you can make purple and white. So that was a nice touch. I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed this game. This one is probably low-key one of my games of the year as far as how much I enjoyed it. And it was good to see it get as much play as it did. And if you've ever been interested in the Pikmin series, all 4 of them are on the Switch. But I'd recommend starting with 4. 4 is a great entry point to the series. My biggest gripe is that they removed the ability of the C-stick on the GameCube to move your troops. You kind of unlock the ability to do that towards the end of the game, like end of the game if you do that Pikmin 1 remake. But the problem is that the button that they give you to do that is also tied to auto-centering the camera behind your back. So it doesn't allow you to make the kind of maneuverability that I'm looking for. But it's just, it brings back what made Pikmin 2 great with the tunnel system, and it just adds the new stuff like the Dondori challenges, and all in all, it's just a phenomenal game. So like I said, I probably would still put Pikmin 2 over 4, just because the bloat and the limiting of how many Pikmin are in your squad kills a little bit of it for me, but not enough to not recommend it, not enough to say it's a great game. All right, and then the next one to come out that I did pick up on launch was my first foray into this series. I had played a little of the PS1 versions at my buddy's house, but I never got into it that much, and that was Armored Core 6: Fires of the Rubicon. And I really enjoyed my time with this game. I enjoyed that it wasn't a super long game. There's multiple endings, and it's one of those things where there's so many customizable options, but once I find something that works for myself, I kind of get pigeonholed into it, much like I did in Final Fantasy 16. And so I really relied on using the double-barrel shotguns, one on each hand, and then, like, kind of a lame setup, I will say. With all the cool weapons they have in that game, I was using a pretty basic loadout, but it was allowing me to tear stuff up and get through the game. And I enjoyed doing it, and I had a lot of fun. Very cool frenetic action. Always nowhere near as tough as the Dark Souls or the other FromSoft games. But in some of the boss battles, you can really see some of that Dark Souls DNA leaking over in a good way. Probably the first major boss fight is a little bit like the Margit boss fight in Elden Ring, where it's a little bit of a stopgap. But once I figured out the double shotgun meta that I was developing, the rest of the game was kind of a cakewalk. And overall, it was very easy, which is a nice thing, because there's not much substance other than that. Because the super customization, I just wasn't that big a fan of. I just got me the tank treads, the double shotguns, the 2 rocket launchers, and I just had a field day. And I enjoyed it. All right, around this time, a download-only game came out for the Switch that had already come out, but it was the first time on the Switch, and I've been waiting to play it because everyone loves the damn thing to death, and that is Vampire Survivors. And I will say, I picked it up. It's only $5. So if you're looking for your best value, that's the best value ever. Like, I can't tell you how much it is such a good time waster game, and it is actually genuinely a lot of fun. It reminds me of what me and my buddy Ryan used to call equilibrium back in Risk of Rain, where the whole point of the game is to get the right meta of upgrades to where you just can walk and the game will play itself, essentially. And that's how it is. You just walk. So you pick up items that will periodically use themselves. So your main thing is just avoiding, which is a very smart concept, in all honesty. It's a very smart concept to do that rather than having it be a twin stick shooter. It is just a move around, but as you pick up the items, as you pick up the different upgrades and power-ups, the game will then allow you to do this, or you can freeze time, or you can have things drop from the sky, and there's tons of depth to it, a lot more depth than I expected. I did go through and I did beat the game, whatever the official end was, and I enjoyed it, and I put it down, but I probably, for a $5 game, I easily put in 10, 15 hours, maybe even more than that, and it's a very good pick up and play game. You don't have to invest too much time or too much energy into that particular game, and I enjoyed it for that. Also around this time, the Resident Evil 4 remake came out, And it's funny, I don't know if I've just been influenced by people like my buddy Avalanche Jared or others who kind of downplay Resident Evil 4, but over the years I've really started to sour on it somewhat just because I miss the old school tank control Resident Evils, and as much as I loved it when 4 came out, all the industry now is using that over the shoulder third person perspective. So I didn't pick up 4 Remake, though I've heard really good things about it. It's one of those games I would love to check out. Did it deserve to be nominated for Game of the Year? I doubt it, but hey, it got it. It got it. You know, I thought they definitely could have gone somewhere else, but there it is. Another game that came out that I played the demo of and I actually didn't like was Sea of Stars, and the official release came out, and thank God I did give it a shot because I really did enjoy the game. It is an old school RPG, Super Nintendo days. The part they put in the demo had some of the more obnoxious characters that I didn't care much for. And just the 2 main leads are a little bland. And then Gus, or whatever the guy's name is it's a little too much, wow, what's going on? Awesome! Oh my god, are you dead? Oh! Like a little too much of the 2023 personality put into a game character. You could roll that back a little bit, but also he had a lot of heart and probably the greatest arc of the entire game. And I didn't go through and get the true ending, but I read about it, and just overall the way the game wrapped up was nice and satisfying, and was a very fun game of innovation as far as how it played. And I would recommend it to anyone who is a fan of those old school RPGs like myself. It is well worth your time, and one of the best games of the year by far. Alright, so back to the physical releases. So the next one that came out that I picked up was Spider-Man 2. And I gotta tell you, this is my most disappointing game of the year. Even more so than Hogwarts Legacy, because I didn't have any hype going into that game. I had major hype going into this game. Now, this game kind of suffers from the problem that a lot of Marvel content has nowadays, where I played the first game. I did not play Miles Morales, but I did pick it up, but I didn't play it. And it seems like playing Miles Morales was required reading in order to understand the beginning of this game. Then they seem to do a time jump where they've moved past, like, there's been battles with Mysterio and Tombstone and other villains that you don't really know about. Kraven himself is presented as this big unstoppable killing force who goes around killing other supervillains, some of which off screen, where you just find their stuff and they're like, oh, they're dead, which kind of sucks. I didn't like that whatsoever. And they call both Miles and Peter Spider-Man, which is just jarring. Like, I get it, but have it, like, I don't know. It's just, and also everyone knows the secret identity of both of them. Like, everyone in their lives knows they're Spider-Man, which is just a stupid thing that I don't like. I don't like where everyone knows the secret identity, because then it makes Mary Jane look a little idiotic when she's complaining about having to pay rent and take a job where she has doing something that's compromising her morals, when she could just move in with Peter. I don't know why she's not. And this leads to one of the most, like, Peter just gets shat on throughout the entire game. He is getting his ass kicked, he's being defeated, saved by everyone else. Even when he gets the symbiote suit, he just suddenly, like, after a day, he just suddenly is being a jerk, and people are like, oh, you're a jerk, when really it's just like, okay. And then he spends, like, in the fight with Mary Jane when she gets taken by a symbiote, he's just apologizing to her constantly, has to be saved by this or that. It's just, I know Spider-Man usually gets his ass kicked, but it felt like a little bit too much. And also the fact that when they put the Spider-Man, the symbiote suit on Harry, which I get why they did it, but a lot of the story feels like fan fiction, where it's like, we know the beats of the storyline, so having the bell tower be in it feels more like an Easter egg than like an actual story beat of its importance. It's just there. And Harry immediately is a symbiote god putting on the suit and able to kick people's asses, which I don't like either. And also, why does Miles have electricity powers and stealth powers if he I don't know. It's all annoying. I'm not a fan of it. And by the end of the game, spoilers, Peter is retiring as Spider-Man for some reason. Okay. Like, there's some great set piece moments, like the lizard fight that they spoiled by showing it in that direct that they did. And some of the things where you're escaping out of this or playing as Venom's really cool. But all in all, just a disappointment, in my opinion. And I'm kind of bummed to have to say that. So yeah, Spider-Man 2 was just not what I was expecting. So some other things that came out around this time was Star Ocean Second Story R, which that's probably been my most wanted to pick up game that I haven't picked up. I have it on my Christmas list. I'm assuming I'm getting that for Christmas because I definitely want to check it out as another old school RPG from the PS1 era. Assassin's Creed Mirage came out, which I haven't played an Assassin's Creed in years, probably almost a decade, not since Black Flag. But I picked up the last 4 that have come out. I picked up Odyssey, Valhalla, and Origins. So maybe the last 3. I'll probably get Mirage down the line at some point, but just not really in a rush for it. And then the last couple of games to talk about here. So the Super Mario Wonder, which I have not been the hugest fan of the 2D side-scrolling Mario games for a while now. They just wasn't a big fan of the one on the Wii, Wii U, the Luigi version, Mario Maker. I didn't pick up Mario Maker 2. There's a lot of Mario Maker DNA in this game, but it is one of the most, for someone who's played all the Mario games, the amount of innovation in this game was a treat to behold. Them bringing back things like the pirate ships, using the kind of the tropes that had been established in the earlier games was nice. I do think it's a little too formulaic. I don't like collecting coins, and I don't like collecting the seeds to progress. But what are you going to do? They got to have you progress somehow. But all in all, very, very fun game. I made a video talking about it and the next game a couple weeks ago, so you can check out there for my more extended thoughts. But very, very cool to see this level of innovation in a Mario game. And I look forward to seeing what they can do more of. But like I said, it is, I mean, at the end of the day, it's just more Mario game. And then lastly, we have Mario RPG, the remake of the original. And for me, I still prefer the original, but if you need to get a gateway drug into it, this is a phenomenal way to start, as well as the quality of life where they've added splash damage. They've made the game just much quicker, whereas the Super Nintendo version is about a 20-hour, 25, 30-hour game. This is closer to a 10-hour, 15-hour game. And I know I've had some people say, well, that's a bad thing. It's not, because you can spend more time playing it if you like it, which I'd recommend, but you got to support stuff like that. That's why I buy these games on launch, is I want to make sure Square and Nintendo know, do a Mario RPG 2, because they put in a lot of effort in here. They brought back Mallow and Geno. They got a very cool combat system. I could easily see them continuing on with this, because I'm just not the biggest fan of the Paper Mario series, so I'd much rather see a Mario RPG 2. And with the legwork they put in this and the expertise they have in this, I think that could be a good thing going forward. And then the last game we're going to talk about that I don't have, that just came out, is, where is it? I had it on there. Oh, Persona 5 Tactica. So I just want to check that out. I have not played any of the Persona games. I have not played Persona 5, though I did almost at one point. And Persona 5 Tactica, I mean, obviously it's a tactics game. I gotta check it out. Okay, so those are all the 2023 releases. I could have talked about stuff like Rhapsody 2 and 3 that came out, though that's really just a re-release, or Cannonball Osmond. So, let's talk about my game of the year. So we're going to do my top 5. Now, I'm going to do another video next week where I actually talk about all the games I took off my backlog this year. None of the games released this year are going to be included in that, or Full Quiet. So, as far as my top 5 games of the year. Now, I'm having to do this off memory, so let's see how it goes. So, number 5, my 5th favorite game that I played this year, honestly, probably going to be Final Fantasy 16. I think it's because it hit that stroke of nostalgia. It was fun. It's probably the best. I enjoyed this action game more than I enjoyed Armored Core 6. And it was nice seeing a mature storyline that had some actual tear-jerking moments, especially the stuff with the wolf was very sweet. And all the big boss fights and everything just was a lot of fun, and I really enjoyed it. So my 5th favorite game, Final Fantasy 16, lock it down. So my 4th favorite game, might surprise you that it's this low, is actually Tears of the Kingdom. And I've kind of gone back and forth on this game as far as where I would rank it. Even though it really is just Breath of the Wild 2. I mean, that's what it is. It still has enough of its own identity to be a very good game, and I feel like the longer we get away from this particular year, the more fondly I will remember this game, and I will hold it in a higher regard. So number 4 is Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. All right, so then what are going to be my 3, 4, and 5? Well, I definitely know what my number 1 is, and I know what my number 2 is. Now, I did say that I'm not mentioning a game that came out last year, but I gotta say, number 3 was Full Quiet. Full Quiet, technically. It's a technicality. It came out in for the Switch, and let's face it, the only people who got it for the NES, it's a very small sample size. This is much more of a wider release, and so Full Quiet number 3. I had this at number 2 at one point, but I think I'm dropping it down a little bit just because the other game is a little bit more significant as far as the franchise I love. And but just overall, phenomenal game. So number 2 would be Pikmin 4. Now, I don't know if you guys know, I'm a huge Pikmin fan, and this was a very, very, very good game. It struck all the right notes. It was a summary of every single game. If you liked any of the Pikmin series, this is the game for you. If you've never played the Pikmin series, this is the game for you. Unlike stuff like Luigi's Mansion 3, or New Pokemon Snap, or things of that nature, this brought the series back and reinvigorated it in such a nice way. My only complaint is just the time gating with having the Pikmin out, which is a small complaint when you factor in the amount of content there is and the amount of enjoyment I got out of this game. And then number 1, surprise, surprise, it's not the Fire Emblem game. It is the Octopath Traveler 2. So this narrowly missed out on being my game of the year in 2018 next to God of War. But this was my game of the year early on, and it just never got unseated. I loved every little piece of it. Now, as enjoyable as Sea of Stars was, I probably would have put Sea of Stars at 6, Armored Core at 7, Fire Emblem Engage at 8, Mario RPG at 9, and then most likely Mario Wonder at 10. So if you want to know my total top 10, it's weird because I haven't played that many modern games in a year in a while. Probably not since 2017 or 2018. But Octopath 2, by far my game of the year. Loved every part of it. Loved the day-night cycle. Loved the little things they changed. The additions of the ultimate move they brought in, and then the final battle with all 8 of them. The fact that the guys leveled up with you. They had secret jobs that weren't just kind of out there. Like the inventor job was cool, and you could have 2 jobs simultaneously in this one and use skill sets from both. I remember, like, there was a lot of differences in there. It's been a while, but there was a lot of differences, and then just the these hands and the characters I enjoyed more. So yes, that is 2023. My goodness, this is gonna be like a 40-minute video, but let me know what you guys thought of 2023. Like I said, this is going to go down as a very, very solid year, but I don't know about it being... Initially, I thought this would give me one of the greatest years of all time, but then with some of the disappointments and then some of the recency bias fading away, I think it's just going to nestle into a very, very good year. But I could be wrong. Let me know what you guys think. Like I said, next week we're going to take a look at the remainder of the games I beat this year and then go over those. And so if I've missed any big releases in 2023, let me know. I hit most of them. I'm trying to think. I even went back and looked up some of the ones, like no one cares about Call of Duty or stuff like that. So, I mean, not on this channel. But yes, that's what you get for this week, guys. As a reminder, I release a new video every Tuesday. I do have a Patreon. Thank you guys all so much for the support. This year has just been phenomenal. Sorry about having to tell you about Godzilla last week. I know, I killed that, and then the review from the week before. I've killed my watch time and everything. So let's see if we bounce back with this video. So I'm gonna do next week will be the 2023 or the games I played on my backlog, and then I'll probably start off the new year with talking about what backlog I want to address. So let me know if those topics sound interesting to you. It's been so nice getting a hold of you. Take care.